Today on Callout, Kent Harrison SAR deals with darkness and death on a late-night call-out.
We're on our way out to Echo Island. We got a report of an overdue canoe with 3 people missing.
And later, Canadian Forces SAR Techs and volunteer aviators team up to search for a missing airplane and its 4 occupants.
The smaller aircraft can get into those areas that perhaps wouldn't be safe for a larger aircraft.
Monday, 10:13 p.m. Kent Harrison search and rescue converge at a public boat launch in Harrison Hot Springs, British Columbia.
3 people in a canoe, overdue, supposed to be back at 5 o'clock. They're out on Harrison Lake. It's dark now.
Brothers Derek and David Patterson and David's wife Michelle had set out on a canoe trip at noon that day and were expected back at 5:30 p.m., nearly 5 hours ago. They were reported missing by their sister, Amanda Fox. Amanda and her husband Stan had already done a search of their own.
We drove up around the lake, figuring maybe, they might have tipped over and they landed on the shore, but they didn't feel like walking or carrying their canoe all the way back.
A small vessel capsizing would not have been an unusual occurrence on Harrison Lake. Its unpredictable conditions are notorious.
In any small boat, not just a canoe, in anything less than 12 feet, you'd find that once you got out into the southern part of the lake, you'd find it pretty choppy. And it's an ugly chop. It's not just a bunch of breakers, it's just all over the place.
The trio had planned to spend the day at Echo Island, a largely uninhabited spot 4 kilometers north of their launching point.
Echo Island is just far enough away with the binoculars I have. We could have seen them if they're on their way back, which we didn't see anything.
With no sign of their missing loved ones and no boat to take them to the island, Stan and Amanda dialed 911 to request search and rescue.
My 2 brothers and my sister-in-law.
It is now past 10 p.m., pitch black, and Kent Harrison SAR are launching their 20-foot aluminum boat, the Shearwater. Their 27-foot jet boat, the Spirit of Harrison, is already in the water warming up. Inside their mobile command center, search manager Neil Brewer has an idea of where the missing canoeists may be.
Could be. My guess is their beach somewhere, tuckered out and afraid to paddle at night.
Okay. Yeah. Is there anywhere they can actually stay there?
Since the eastern side of Echo Island is dotted with cottages and people, the lost canoeists are most likely either stranded on the uninhabited southern tip or on Marguerite and Camille Islands. Neil sends the Spirit of Harrison to scan these areas, while the smaller Shearwater is tasked to search around the mainland.
We could see the search and rescue lights from our front porch, and so we were just kind of watching and waiting and, hoping everything was fine.
Before long, the crew of the Shearwater spots some items floating in the water.
A cooler bag.
A few short minutes later, they find a canoe paddle, another ominous sign.
Anything from the Spirit?
Almost simultaneously, Command receives a report from the Spirit crew, now searching the shoreline of Echo Island.
We circled the islands, 2 little islands, then proceeded around the southern tip of Echo Island, and within 10 minutes we had spotted the canoe. At that point I panned my searchlight up the shore and spotted what appeared to be someone laying there. I wasn't close enough to really see what it was. Then I thought, oh boy, here we go.
We found 1 subject on shore, and we're going in to see if we can find the other 2 subjects. Over.
As the Spirit goes in for a closer look, Dan hears people shouting out to the crew from high above on the rocks. Just then, the Shearwater arrives on scene. 2 subjects are seen scrambling down the rocks to join Dan and his team on the beach. Everyone converges around the inert figure of Derek Patterson.
Need an ambulance? Waiting back down.
I was kind of torn. This is something new for me, that the subjects had to go, like, we had to go right down past the brother on the shore. And then as we got down there, the other boat came in right then. So then we had everybody right there. And it was kind of a strange situation, strange scenario.
Meanwhile, Command is looking for an update.
Command, Shearwater, go ahead.
Yeah, just looking for an update on their status, whether we need any medical attention on this end.
We have one code for it. Other two are okay.
Subject code 4, confirm.
That's affirmative.
I didn't expect that we would be dealing with any deceased persons that night. I think I was hopeful that these people were sat on a beach somewhere and it had simply got dark on them and they were waiting for daylight to come home.
Command, Spirit. I think at this point, Shearwater stay on scene with the code 4, and the Spirit brings the other two subjects back. I think it would be a little more comfortable in the cabin on the Spirit just to keep them warm.
The team is shaken, but they focus on the task at hand. Get the survivors warmed up and off the island.
We have Michelle and David on board, transporting them back to you. Over.
The Shearwater crew will remain on scene with the deceased subject. As it turns out, large waves from passing boats had capsized the Patterson's canoe. Unable to flip the canoe upright, they decide to swim about 200 meters back to Echo Island in the frigid waters.
We were holding on to the boat and started kicking our feet as much as we could. And it was really cold, and Derek, he didn't have much layer of clothing. So I don't think he was kicking as fast as he should be.
When one of the oars started floating away, Derek decided to go after it, but he struggled to swim back to the canoe.
We could almost touch each other. That's how close he was.
All three were wearing PFDs, but had no protection against the glacial-fed waters of Harrison Lake. Before long, Derek succumbs to hypothermia.
We pulled the boat in. David went back into the water to go grab Derek. And then he pulled him in and started CPR. And nothing was happening. I came over and saw David crying because he said he's dead, and I couldn't believe it. I thought he was unconscious or something. I thought he was still alive. I could see boats going by. I was waving my hands just to get anybody's attention, and nothing.
Night set in. They sat in shock, trying to warm up, staring out at the twinkling lights of Harrison Hot Springs. The tragic turn of events playing over and over in their minds. Then, Kent Harrison SAR came to the rescue.
Rita, he says his sister just lives across the street.
Yeah, but the officer's here. We're waiting for the ambulance. Can somebody take me?
After bringing David and Michelle to dry land, the Kent Harrison search and rescue team goes back out to recover the deceased subject as well as the canoe. Their night won't end until 2 in the morning. Tonight, Kent Harrison has brought some comfort and closure to a family that now begins another journey. A journey of grief and remembrance. For Kent Harrison, it's yet another chapter in a book of rescues written daily in Canada's vast but unforgiving landscape.
I think the group that we have, some of them have been with us for as long as 25 years. They're very seasoned, they're very empathetic, they're family people. They're certainly not heroes, they're not out there like Rambo. They're just very good, I think, genuine people who can size up a situation and know how to deal with it.
Now, Canadian Forces SAR Techs and volunteer aviators search for a missing airplane and its 4 occupants.
If it's later during the search, we'll be using helicopters and hoist the SAR Tech to this side.
In the heart of the Okanagan Valley in British Columbia, a dozen aircraft are busy scouring the mountains in search of a missing plane. A Piper PA-24 Comanche and its 4 occupants were reported overdue 7 days ago. Somewhere along its intended flight path from Penticton to Victoria, the plane had disappeared from radar and never arrived at its destination.
Our first goal is to go there and sweep the area from a high altitude, looking at any radio contact and any electronic searches, which is also part of listening out for the emergency locator beacons.
Search and rescue crews have been combing these mountains for a week. With no distress call or emergency beacon signal detected, the plane could be anywhere in a very large area.
In all the years that I've been searching, I know like BC is the most challenging area to conduct searches. We have very tall trees, we have deep valleys, high mountains. This is a very difficult area, and I mean, it's a large area that we're searching.
Behind this massive search effort are not only military crews, but civilian ones as well. Civilians such as Dave Qualley, a private pilot from Vancouver.
For me, this is day 2. I've just joined the search yesterday, so in some ways I'm a little fresher than some of the other pilots, so it's going to give me a chance to give them some relief so they can take a day or 2 off.
Which aircraft are up from here that will be coming back today?
The civilians gathered here at the Kelowna Airport all belong to the Civil Air Search and Rescue Association, CSARA, a volunteer organization with over 2,500 members across Canada.
CSARA's role in search and rescue is to provide supplemental air capability for searches, whether it be helping the Canadian military do air searches for downed aircraft, or whether it be helping the RCMP find missing persons.
CSARA volunteers contribute by piloting their own plane or by acting as navigator or spotter. A typical search crew is made up of 1 pilot, 1 navigator, and 2 spotters. Naturally, a pilot must be qualified to fly a plane. A navigator, on the other hand, must undergo standard training, but does not need to have a pilot's license.
Their job is to keep track of the maps, navigate the plane to get me to the search area, and once we're in the search area, to document the area we cover.
Anyone with normal vision can be a spotter. A spotter's job consists of visually scanning the search area for any clue.
Their sole job is to look out the window and nothing but. So in a way, they're the most important people on board the plane, because without them, we're just out flying around.
Spotting may seem straightforward, but an enormous amount of focus is required, especially when the missing plane is small, like the Comanche in today's search.
It's very tiring being a spotter. They like to change them off every so many minutes. It can range from 15 minutes to half an hour.
One of the crews described the searching as looking through a head of broccoli. And it was a great analogy because certainly the types of trees and the shrubs indicate that there's a lot of space below, but with the canopies this time of year, it's hard to see through the treetops.
Trained spotters are a valuable asset and are therefore often called upon to sit on military aircraft.
We sit in these lovely bubble windows and try hopefully to find the missing occupants.
The missing Comanche and its 4 occupants could be anywhere along the Penticton-Victoria corridor. To keep track of the progress, the large search area is divided into grids, which are assigned to the crews. It's then up to each individual navigator to construct their flight plans.
They would then plan how they would approach their particular area. If it's mountainous, where they would begin, where they do the high peaks first, and then do contours around these peaks, and then do the valleys. So a lot of planning and consideration goes into how you approach your particular area.
Pilot Mark Payer and navigator Nick Tarasiuk have established their route for the day. Like the other crews, they will conduct the air search at 3 different altitudes, starting high up and working their way down. Initially, they will fly at 450 meters above ground, allowing a visual range of 5 kilometers on either side of the plane. If nothing is spotted, the pilot will fly lower to the ground, narrowing the visual range to 1.5 kilometers on each side. In the final stages, aircraft will fly at a mere 150 meters above the ground, so that the spotters can scan the area in more detail.
That's where we're at on day 7, getting closer, lower to the ground, getting in between the trees, and trying to pick up any anomalies in the landscape, such as a broken tree, a swath cut, something that looks unnatural that a trained spotter would know to look for.
12:45 p.m. Crews have had no luck locating the missing aircraft in the morning's assigned search grids.
It's a new area for us, so no joy.
After quickly refueling their planes and their stomachs, they're back out again. A number of challenges have been complicating this particular search. Friends of the missing pilot are offering a $10,000 reward for finding the wreckage. Independent searchers have taken to the skies and are posing a safety risk to military and Casera crews. Furthermore, smoke from neighboring wildfires is reducing visibility.
This has probably been one of the worst fire seasons since 2003 for British Columbia. It creates a haze in the air, which lessens our visual acuity. It's important to keep situal awareness when you're flying low level in the mountains and being able to see all the aircraft. It also hampers our vision on the ground too, and that's an important factor.
Forest fires, weather conditions, and air traffic are closely monitored by the search coordinators from inside their temporary base. Besides coordinating and tasking crews, Casera also works hand in glove with military search and rescue. If a Casera plane spots the missing Comanche aircraft or any of its occupants, search coordinators will notify the Canadian forces. The SAR Techs will then parachute to the site to rescue the subjects. In this incident, however, the likelihood of survivors is very low. Another approach will be taken.
If it's later during the search, we'll be using helicopters and hoist the SAR Tech to the site and conduct the investigation on the location.
In this particular call-out, the military is highly involved. But in some cases, particularly when the incident is in a remote area, Casera will perform on its own.
They understand the local area weather patterns. They know the habits of the local pilots. They know the choke points for weather and VFR routes and the like.
We're very mobile. We can pretty well operate anywhere. As long as we have an aircraft and a crew, we can set up in any hangar. And all we need, is just a place with a phone and where we can lay out our maps and we can plan a search.
Sarah Base, go ahead.
A lot of those cases will turn out to be false alarms. So we can react to that fairly quickly, determine it's a false alarm, and save the Canadian military from launching some of their heavier assets.
Operating a military aircraft costs $8,000 to $10,000 per hour versus $180 to $230 for a Casera plane. That's a big savings for the taxpayer, making Casera an extremely cost-effective and versatile asset in search and rescue missions. The sun is fading. Search teams must stand down for another day.
Even though you still see daylight out, we're realizing that with shadows and everything, the effectiveness starts dropping off at about 5 or 6 o'clock.
Everyone is feeling the fatigue of a week-long search, but they're not ready to give up yet.
Off again tomorrow morning. We'll probably do another couple of sorties. So, yeah.
A lot of energy, especially amongst volunteers. They've got this gung-ho attitude. They want to get out there and find people. And it's hard to slow them down or tell them to take some time to themselves. So every once in a while we have to start looking at each other, making sure that fatigue isn't setting in. And the long-term players, we tell them to take a day off every once in a while and try to bring in new fresh blood. And if we need to call you back again, we'll give you a couple hours notice at least.
You know, everyone's hoping that we'll come across more clues with investigations and find something tomorrow with the good weather ahead.
And sure enough, the Piper Comanche is finally spotted the next morning, on day 8 of the search. The wreckage is on a mountainside near Penticton. There are no survivors. The searcher's job is done. It's now up to investigators to look into the cause of the crash. As for the members of Casera, it's time for them to get back to their lives.
All volunteers, they put in their own time and they work, some of them. So it's a matter of them juggling their job and volunteering to do this, and oftentimes away from home.
Callout Search and Rescue features real stories filmed live by search and rescue teams during actual missions. Find out more at calloutsar.tv.